The day Earth joined the Galactic Council was supposed to be the greatest moment in human history. Admiral Dae-hyun stood in the massive council chamber, looking at the thousands of alien species gathered around him. The chamber floated in space, orbiting a giant planet with rings of ice and dust. Through the clear walls, he could see stars stretching forever in all directions. This was it. Humanity had finally made it to the big stage. Dae-hyun smiled as he signed the agreement. Back on Earth, billions of people watched and celebrated. In Seoul, his wife and 2 children stood in the crowd waving flags. They were so proud of him. He wished he could be there with them, but this moment was too important. He was making history. The council leader, a tall reptilian creature named Vexara, placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. The translator in Dae-hyun's ear turned the alien's hissing voice into smooth words. Vexara welcomed Earth to the galactic community. He promised friendship, trade, and protection. He said humanity would grow and prosper under the Council's guidance. As a gift, the Council gave Earth advanced technology, faster ships, better computers, and energy systems that seemed like magic. Dr. Hana, Earth's top scientist, couldn't believe what she was seeing. The technology was hundreds of years ahead of anything humans had made. She and her team started studying it immediately, eager to learn everything. Minister Soo-jin worked day and night making deals with alien species. She arranged trade agreements for resources Earth needed. She made friends with diplomats from a dozen different worlds. Everything was going perfectly. Too perfectly. 3 months after joining the council, an insect-like alien named Tholmik approached Dae-hyun in private. Tholmik's species had joined the council 50 years ago, and he looked nervous. His translator made clicking sounds as he spoke. He told Dae-hyun to be careful. He said the council's gift might not be what it seemed. Dae-hyun didn't understand. He asked what Tholmik meant, but the alien refused to say more. He just repeated his warning and left quickly, looking around as if someone might be watching. Dae-hyun felt uncomfortable, but he pushed the feeling away. Everything was going so well. Why worry about vague warnings? 2 weeks later, Commander Tae-yang discovered something wrong with Earth's defense systems. The new technology the Council had given them contained hidden programs, small pieces of code buried deep in the systems, code that could shut everything down with a single command. He immediately called Dae-hyun and Dr. Hana. Dr. Hana checked the technology again. Her face went pale. Tae-yang was right. Every system they had installed had backdoors. Someone could disable Earth's defenses, communications, and power grids whenever they wanted. It was a trap, and they had walked right into it. Dae-hyun tried to contact the council. He needed answers. But before he could send his message, alarms started blaring throughout the space station. On the screens, he saw Earth's defense satellites going offline one by one. The power grids on the planet started failing. Within minutes, Earth was completely defenseless. Then Vexara's face appeared on every screen across Earth and in space. His voice was cold and factual. He explained that the council had made a difficult decision. Humanity was too aggressive, growing too fast, developing too quickly. History had shown that young species like humans often became threats to galactic stability. The Council could not take that risk. Before anyone could respond, the first missiles struck Earth. They came from Council ships that had been hiding in the outer solar system. Dae-hyun watched in horror from the space station as explosions bloomed across his home planet. Seoul was hit first, then New York, Beijing, London, and Moscow. Every major city on Earth was being destroyed. He tried to call his wife. The line was dead. He tried again and again, but there was only silence. On the screens, he could see Seoul burning. The whole city was gone. His family was gone. Everything was gone. Captain Jae-won was on Earth when the attack started. He was visiting his parents in Busan when the sky lit up with falling weapons. He grabbed his parents and ran for the nearest shelter. Underground bunkers had been built decades ago during earlier wars. Now they were humanity's only hope. Jae-won helped thousands of people get to safety, but millions more died in the streets. The bombs kept falling for 3 days straight. The air filled with smoke and radiation. Rivers boiled. Buildings melted. The Earth that had been green and blue from space turned gray and brown. In orbit, Tae-yang worked desperately to restore Earth systems. He managed to disable some of the Council's backdoors, but it was too late. The damage was done. He redirected what little power remained to help the underground shelters. At least some people would survive. On the 3rd day, the attack stopped. Vexara appeared on the screens again. He declared Earth quarantined. No ships would be allowed in or out. Humanity would be left alone to slowly die on their poisoned world. The Council ships left the solar system, their mission complete. Daehyun sat in the dark space station staring at the damaged planet below. Around him other survivors gathered. Minister Sujin had made it to the Mars colony before the attack. Dr. Hana was safe in a research station near Jupiter. Captain Jae-won sent a message from Earth saying millions had survived in the bunkers. Tae-yang reported from another orbital platform. They held an emergency meeting over video. The numbers were terrible. 8 billion humans had died. 30% of Earth's population was gone. The planet's surface was poisoned with radiation. Most cities were completely destroyed. The survivors faced starvation, disease, and a slow death. But as Dae-hyun looked at the faces of the other survivors, he saw something that surprised him. It wasn't despair. It was rage. Pure, cold rage. Minister Sujin spoke first. She said they needed to survive. They needed to rebuild, not to live peacefully with the Council, but to make them pay for what they had done. Dr. Hana agreed. She said they had learned much from the Council's technology. They could reverse engineer it, improve it, and weaponize it. They could turn the Council's own tools against them. Tae-yang said he had already started hiding resources in the asteroid belt. Secret shipyards could be built where the Council would never find them. Earth appeared dead, but humanity was far from finished. Captain Jae-won's voice came through with static from Earth. He said the people in the bunkers wanted revenge. They wanted to fight. They were ready to do whatever it took. Dae-hyun listened to them all. Then he stood up and looked at the camera. His face was hard and cold. The man who had smiled while signing the peace agreement was gone. In his place was something else, something dangerous. He spoke slowly and clearly so everyone would understand. They wanted to see what humans were capable of when threatened. They wanted to eliminate a potential danger. Fine. They would learn what humans were truly capable of. They would learn what happens when you leave humans with nothing left to lose. The others nodded. They understood. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about making the Council regret the day they betrayed Earth. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity could be more terrifying than any alien species had imagined. Dae-hyun made a promise that day. A promise that would echo through the galaxy for decades to come. The Council had made their choice when they attacked. Now humanity would make theirs, and the Council would learn that of all the species in the galaxy, humans were the most dangerous when pushed too far. The war had just begun. 5 years passed since the attack. To the Galactic Council, Earth was a dead world. Their sensors showed only ruins and radiation. The few signals coming from the planet were weak and fading. They believed humanity was dying slowly, exactly as planned. They were wrong. Deep underground, in massive caverns carved from solid rock, humanity was rebuilding. Dr. Hana walked through a facility that stretched for miles beneath what used to be the Rocky Mountains. Thousands of scientists worked day and night, taking apart every piece of Council technology they could find. They learned how it worked, then made it better. The Council had given Earth their technology thinking it would make humans dependent. Instead, humans learned everything they needed to know. Dr. Hana's team discovered how to build faster ships, stronger weapons, and better shields. But they didn't stop there. They weaponized everything. Commander Tae-yang ran the hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt. Giant rocks were hollowed out and filled with construction facilities. From the outside, they looked like normal asteroids. Inside, they built warships. Sleek, fast ships designed for one purpose: killing. The ships were painted black and built to avoid detection. They carried weapons that the Council had never seen before. Human engineers had studied how Council shields worked and designed weapons specifically to break through them. Every ship was a hunter, built to strike fast and disappear. Minister Sujin worked on something equally important. She reached out to other alien species in secret, species that the Council had bullied and controlled for centuries. She told them what happened to Earth. She explained that if the Council did it to humanity, they could do it to anyone. Fear was a powerful motivator. Many species were terrified of the Council, but they were also terrified of becoming the next Earth. Slowly, carefully, Sujin built an alliance. They called themselves the Coalition of the Forsaken, species that had been pushed down by the Council for too long. Tholmik, the insect alien who had tried to warn Daehyun, became one of humanity's strongest allies. His species, the Hive Collective, had massive industrial capacity. They began secretly building ships and weapons for Earth. In return, humans shared their new technology. It was a partnership built on mutual hatred of the Council. While the others built ships and made alliances, Captain Jae-won prepared for a different kind of war. He trained special forces teams in the ruins of Earth's cities, men and women who had lost everything and wanted revenge. They learned to be silent, deadly, and completely ruthless. Jae-won himself had changed. The man who once followed rules and regulations was gone. He taught his soldiers that mercy was weakness. He taught them that the Council deserved no quarter, no compassion, and no second chances. His teams became weapons just as deadly as the ships Taeyang was building. In the 6th year after the attack, Admiral Dae-hyun approved the first strike. It was time to let the Council know that Earth still lived. A small Council mining station in a distant system suddenly went dark. No distress signal, no survivors, just silence. 3 days later, another station disappeared, then a supply ship, then a communications relay. The attack seemed random, but they followed a careful pattern designed by Taeyang. Each attack spread confusion and fear. The Council started looking over their shoulder, wondering what was happening. Jae-won led a raid on a Council research facility. His team moved through the base like ghosts. They disabled the alarms, cut the communications, and eliminated everyone inside within 20 minutes. They took all the research data and destroyed the facility completely. No one even knew humans were there until it was too late. The Council sent investigators to figure out what was happening. They found nothing. The human ships left no traces. The attack teams disappeared like smoke. Councillor Vex Ara ordered increased security at all Council facilities, but it didn't help. The attacks continued. Meanwhile, Dr. Hana was working on something that would change the war completely. She studied the biology of different Council species. She learned how their genetics worked, what made them different from each other and from humans. Then she built weapons that could target specific species. The nanomachines were tiny, smaller than a cell. They could be released into the air or water and would spread like a virus. But they were programmed to attack only certain genetic markers. A weapon designed for the reptilian species would kill them, but leave everyone else unharmed. It was genocide in a bottle. When Dr. Hana showed the weapons to Daehyun, even he was shocked. These weapons crossed every line that humanity had once held sacred. Using them would make humans as bad as the Council, maybe worse. But when he looked at the reports of how many humans had died, when he remembered his family burning in Seoul, his doubts disappeared. He approved the weapons. Dr. Hana went back to her lab feeling sick but determined. She knew what they were doing was terrible. She knew history would judge them harshly, but the Council had started this war. Humans would finish it. 2 years into the guerrilla campaign, humanity was ready for a bigger strike. Taeyang had identified a major target. Proxima Station was a huge military hub where the Council gathered supplies and troops. It had over 10,000 Council personnel and was heavily defended. Taking it would send a message that could not be ignored. Daehyun gathered his commanders for the final planning. Minister Sujin confirmed that their allies would provide support. Dr. Hana prepared special weapons for the assault. Captain Jae-won readied his best teams. Commander Taeyang would lead the cyber attack to shut down the station's defenses. The attack came without warning. One moment, Proxima Station was operating normally. The next, every computer system crashed simultaneously. Lights went out. Life support failed.
Defense weapons powered down.
Taeyang had done his job perfectly. Then the human ships appeared. 20 sleek black warships materialized from nowhere and opened fire. Their weapons tore through the station's disabled shields like paper. Explosions ripped through the hull. Jae-won's assault teams boarded through the breaches and moved through the station methodically. The Council forces tried to fight back, but they were confused and disorganized. The humans showed no mercy. Every Council soldier they found was killed. Every officer was executed. When the Council personnel tried to surrender, Jae-won's teams shot them anyway. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. In 3 hours, Proxima Station was silent. 10,000 Council members were dead. Not a single human casualty. Daehyun ordered the station completely destroyed. The explosion could be seen from light years away. The galaxy watched in shock. Humanity, the species everyone thought was dying, had just destroyed a major military installation. News spread quickly. Questions arose. How were humans still alive? Where had they gotten such powerful weapons? How had they become so deadly? Councillor Vexara called an emergency meeting. The other council members were frightened. They had expected Earth to die quietly. Instead, humans had become a threat. A real threat. Vexara ordered a full military response. He wanted humanity wiped out completely this time. But something had changed in the galaxy. The Coalition of the Forsaken went public. Minister Sujin broadcast a message to every system. She explained what the Council had done to Earth. She showed images of the destroyed cities, the dead billions, the betrayal. She asked how many other species would be next. Fear spread through the Council's territory. Their younger member species started questioning orders. Some refused to send troops against Earth. The Council's authority was cracking. Their attempt to eliminate a threat had created something far worse. They had created an enemy with nothing to lose and everything to gain from their destruction. Daehyun sat in his command ship, looking at reports from across the galaxy. The war was spreading. More species were joining the coalition. More human ships were launching from the hidden shipyards. Dr. Hana's weapons were ready for deployment. He thought about the man he used to be, the diplomat who believed in peace and cooperation. That man had died with his family and soul. In his place was someone harder, colder, and more dangerous, someone who would do whatever it took to make the Council pay. The Council had tried to crush humanity before they became a threat. Instead, they had created the exact monster they feared, and that monster was coming for them. The meeting lasted 3 days. Earth's leaders argued about what to do with their victory. Admiral Daehyun wanted to establish a strong military government with Earth at the center. He argued that showing weakness now would invite new threats. The galaxy needed to fear humanity enough to never attack them again. Minister Sujin disagreed. She pointed out that ruling through fear was exactly what the Council had done. If humanity followed that path, they would become the very thing they had fought against. Eventually, someone would rise up against them just like they had risen against the Council. The cycle would never end. Dr. Hana supported Sujin. She was tired of death and destruction. Her bioweapons had killed billions, and she would carry that guilt forever. She argued that humanity needed to prove they could be better than the Council. They needed to show mercy and build something good from the ashes. Captain Jae-won was conflicted. Part of him wanted to keep fighting, to maintain the military strength that had won the war. But another part of him, the part that had nightmares every night, wanted peace. He was tired of killing. He was tired of being a weapon. Commander Tae-yang made a surprising suggestion. He proposed that humanity put itself on trial. They would hold public hearings where their actions during the war would be examined by both humans and aliens. They would acknowledge the terrible things they had done and accept responsibility. Daehyun initially rejected the idea. Admitting guilt would make humanity look weak. But Tae-yang argued that it would do the opposite. It would show strength. It took courage to admit mistakes. It took wisdom to learn from them. The Council had never admitted wrongdoing in 10,000 years. Humanity could be different. After 3 days of argument, they reached a decision. They would hold the trials. They would create a new galactic government with real democracy and checks on power. They would help rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. It wouldn't be easy. Many humans wanted revenge and domination. But the leaders knew this was the only path to lasting peace. The trials began 6 months later on neutral ground, a station built specifically for this purpose, orbiting a star in unclaimed space. Judges from 50 different species presided. Human leaders testified about their decisions during the war. Admiral Daehyun was the first to testify. He spoke honestly about ordering attacks on civilian targets. He described approving the bioweapons. He admitted that revenge had driven many of his decisions. He didn't try to justify everything, though he explained why he had made certain choices. The galaxy listened. Dr. Hana testified next. She broke down in tears as she described her weapons and how many they had killed. She showed technical details of how the bioweapons worked. She held nothing back. When asked if she regretted creating them, she said yes. But she also said she understood why it had seemed necessary at the time. Captain Jaewon described the ground operations, the executions, the brutality, the times he had shot surrendering enemies. He spoke in a flat voice, emotionless, but everyone could see the pain in his eyes. He was a broken man admitting to terrible acts. The galaxy was shocked by the honesty. Many species expected humans to make excuses or blame everything on the council. Instead, they saw leaders taking responsibility, admitting fault, accepting that they had done terrible things even if they had reasons. The trials lasted 6 months. In the end, no formal punishment was given. How could you punish the most powerful military force in the galaxy? But the act of holding the trials itself mattered. It showed that humanity was capable of self-reflection and change. Minister Sujin then unveiled the Treaty of New Worlds. It was a new framework for galactic government. Unlike the Council, which had concentrated power in a few old species, this system gave equal voting rights to all species regardless of age or size. Military forces were limited for everyone, including Earth. The treaty included mandatory technology sharing. Species with advanced knowledge had to help less developed ones. Defense pacts replaced forced submission. Independent courts would settle disputes instead of the strong simply imposing their will on the weak. Many humans opposed these ideas. They argued that after everything Earth had suffered, they deserved to be on top. Why should they share power with species that might threaten them later? Why should they limit their military when it had saved them? Sujin answered these concerns directly, because the alternative was becoming the Council, because power without limits always led to corruption, because the only way to ensure lasting peace was to make everyone feel invested in the system. If other species felt oppressed, they would eventually rebel. The cycle would continue. The Treaty of New Worlds was signed by representatives from 300 species. Not everyone agreed with it. Some thought it was too soft. Others thought it gave Earth too much influence. But most recognized it as a genuine attempt to build something better. The hardest part came next: rebuilding. Earth led a massive reconstruction effort across the galaxy. The technology they had developed during the war was now shared freely. Dr. Hana dedicated herself to creating cures for the damage her bioweapons had caused. She couldn't bring back the dead, but she could help the survivors. Captain Jaewon retired from military service. He returned to Earth and started a memorial garden. It honored all who had died in the war, both human and alien. He worked in the garden every day, planting trees and flowers. It was his way of creating life after spending years dealing death. People came to visit the garden. Some were families of human victims. Others were aliens whose worlds had been destroyed. They met each other there, shared their pain, and slowly began to heal. Jaewon never spoke much, but his presence and his work said everything. Commander Ta Yang took on a new role as an educator. He taught young diplomats and officers about the war. He made sure they understood the full horror of what had happened. He never sugarcoated or glorified the violence. The lesson had to be clear. Revenge was easy. Rebuilding was hard. But only rebuilding led to peace. Ambassador Tolmik and his species became humanity's closest allies. The Hive Collective worked alongside humans to rebuild damaged worlds. The friendship that had formed during the war grew stronger in peace. Tolmik often said that he was proud of humanity for choosing the harder path. 20 years after the war ended, Admiral Dae Hyun gave his final public speech. He was old now, his hair white and his body weak. He stood before the new Galactic Assembly, representing hundreds of species working together. He spoke about the war honestly. The Council had feared what humanity might become. They were right to fear, but wrong to strike. Their attack had created the very monster they worried about. Humanity had shown them brutality beyond imagination, but humanity had also shown something more important. They had shown the ability to stop, to choose a different path, to build instead of destroy. That choice, Daehyun said, was what truly made them worthy of the stars. Not their weapons or their strength, but their willingness to grow and change. He ended his speech with a warning. The capacity for violence was still there. Humanity could still be terrible if pushed. But they had learned that being terrible wasn't the same as being strong. Real strength was choosing mercy when you had the power to destroy. 30 years later, Earth had fully recovered. The poisoned lands were cleaned. New cities rose from the ruins. The population was growing again. But the planet never forgot. Monuments stood in every city, reminding people of what had been lost and what had been learned. The galaxy had changed too. The new government wasn't perfect. There were still disputes and problems. But there was also cooperation on a scale never seen before. Species that had once feared each other now worked together. Trade flourished. Knowledge spread freely. Peace held. Commander Tai Yang, now an old man himself, still taught young people about the war. His students always asked the same question. If he could go back, would he do things differently? His answer never changed. Yes. But he understood why they had done what they did. The important thing was learning from it. In the memorial garden on Earth, now vast and beautiful, stood a monument with words carved in 1,000 languages. They pushed us to become monsters. We chose to remain human. Never forget either truth. The galaxy watched humanity with a mix of respect and caution. Everyone knew what humans were capable of when threatened. The war had proven that beyond doubt. But everyone also knew that humans could choose mercy over vengeance, building over destruction. That duality defined humanity's place in the galaxy. They were the species that had suffered genocide and responded with genocide. But they were also the species that had stopped themselves, admitted their wrongs, and built something better. Young humans growing up in this new era learned both parts of their history. They learned about the attack on Earth and the terrible losses. They learned about the brutal revenge and the millions who died. And they learned about the choice to stop, to rebuild, to create peace. The story of Earth's war became a legend told across the galaxy. Different species emphasized different parts. Some focused on the brutality, others on the redemption. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had proven that even the darkest nature could be overcome by conscious choice. General Krathor looked at the fleet assembled before him and felt confident. 5,000 warships from every corner of Council space. The largest military force gathered in a century. They would crush Earth once and for all, and this time there would be no mistakes. No survivors. The fleet entered the Sol system expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they found silence. Earth's orbit was empty. No defense satellites, no warships, nothing. The planet itself looked even worse than before. More of the surface was blackened and dead. It appeared humanity had finally given up. Krathor ordered his fleet forward. They would bombard Earth again, turn the entire surface to glass, and make sure nothing could ever live there again. His ships moved into position around the planet. That's when the trap sprung. Asteroids throughout the solar system suddenly opened up. Hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as space rocks activated all at once. Thousands of missiles launched from every direction. The Council fleet was surrounded. Commander Taeyang sat in a hidden control center on Mars and watched the battle unfold on his screens. He had spent 3 years preparing this trap. Every asteroid had been carefully positioned. Every weapons platform had been tested and retested. Now he pressed a button and unleashed hell. The missiles hit the Council fleet from all sides. Ships exploded by the hundreds. Their shields, designed to stop attacks from one direction, couldn't handle the overwhelming fire coming from everywhere at once. In the first 10 minutes, 1,000 Council ships were destroyed. Then the human warships appeared. They had been hiding behind Jupiter's moons, waiting. 300 black ships, smaller than the Council vessels but faster and deadlier. They tore through the confused Council formation like sharks through fish. Admiral Dae-hyun commanded the attack from his flagship. He felt nothing as he watched Council ships burn. No satisfaction, no joy, just cold determination. Each destroyed ship was one step closer to making the Council pay. Each dead alien was justice for the billions who died on Earth. General Krathor tried to organize a retreat, but there was nowhere to go. Human ships blocked every escape route. The weapons platforms kept firing. His fleet was being slaughtered. He sent a desperate message asking for reinforcements, but Daehyun made sure it never got through. Taeyang had jammed all council communications. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 4,000 council ships were destroyed. The remaining 1,000 were damaged and fleeing in panic. The human fleet had lost only 12 ships. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. But Daehyun wasn't finished. He ordered his ships to pursue the retreating council forces. They hunted them across 3 star systems, destroying every ship they found. He wanted survivors to escape. He wanted them to spread the word about what happened. He wanted the entire galaxy to know that humanity was no longer hiding. The news of the battle shocked the galaxy. The council had sent their best fleet and it had been destroyed. Questions spread everywhere. How powerful had humanity become? What else were they hiding? Fear began to replace confidence in council territory. Daehyun didn't give them time to recover. He launched a full offensive. Human ships and their coalition allies attacked council territory from a dozen different directions. They targeted military bases, industrial centers, and supply lines. Nothing was safe. Captain Jaewon led ground invasions of council colonies. His assault teams were brutal and efficient. They would land on a planet, take control of key facilities within hours, and execute any council officials they found. The local populations were given a choice: join the coalition or stay out of the way. Most chose to join. Years of council oppression had created deep resentment. Many species were happy to see the council brought down. They provided intelligence, resources, and sometimes troops. The rebellion grew faster than anyone had imagined. Minister Soo-jin coordinated the political side of the war. Every council defeat was broadcast across the galaxy. Every atrocity the council had committed over the centuries was revealed. She turned public opinion against them. The council went from respected leaders to hated tyrants in the eyes of billions. But the worst was yet to come. Dr. Hana's bioweapons were ready for deployment. She stood in her laboratory, looking at the small containers that held so much death. Each one was designed for a specific council species. Each one could kill billions. She had argued against using them. Even now, part of her screamed that this was wrong. These weapons would make humanity no better than the council, maybe worse. But Daehyun had made his decision. 3 council worlds would be targeted. Worlds that were purely military installations with no civilian populations. That was a lie, and everyone knew it. The target worlds had families, children, and innocent people. But Daehyun didn't care anymore. He wanted the council to feel the same terror that humans had felt when their cities burned. The bioweapons were deployed silently. Small drones entered the atmosphere of 3 worlds and released the nanomachines. Within days, the entire populations began dying. The weapons spread like a plague, killing only the target species while leaving others untouched. The galaxy watched in horror. Images of the dying worlds spread everywhere. Aliens choking, bleeding, dying in agony. Entire cities going silent. 3 species facing extinction. The council called it genocide. Humanity called it justice. Minister Soo-jin gave a speech that was broadcast to every corner of known space. She didn't apologize. She didn't make excuses. She simply reminded everyone what the council had done to Earth. 8 billion dead. Cities turned to ash. A planet poisoned for centuries. The council had taught humanity what genocide looked like. Now they were learning the lesson themselves. Not everyone agreed with what humanity was doing. Even among humans there were protests. Religious leaders spoke out against the violence. Some human colonies refused to support the war effort. They argued that humanity was losing its soul, becoming the very monster they fought against. Captain Jaewon was sent to put down a large protest on Mars. Thousands of humans had gathered, demanding that Daehyun stop the bioweapon attacks. They carried signs and chanted about peace. Jaewon's soldiers opened fire on the crowd. 50 humans died before the rest scattered. The incident created a split in human leadership. Dr. Hana confronted Daehyun, demanding to know when the killing would stop. Taeyang questioned whether they had gone too far. Even Minister Su Jin expressed concerns about maintaining support if they kept getting more brutal. Daehyun listened to their concerns and dismissed them all. He reminded them of what they had lost. He showed them images from Earth's attack. He asked them if they really wanted to stop before the council was completely destroyed. One by one, they backed down. The war would continue. Ambassador Tholmik came to see Daehyun privately. The insect alien had been humanity's ally from the beginning, but now he was troubled. He asked a simple question. When would humans stop? When the council was defeated? When every council species was dead? When would revenge be enough? Daehyun didn't answer. He couldn't answer. Because he didn't know. The man who had once been a diplomat, who had believed in peace, was gone. In his place was someone driven purely by rage and hatred. He had become exactly what Tholmik feared. Meanwhile, the council was fracturing. Councillor Vexara wanted to deploy forbidden weapons, ancient technology that could destroy entire star systems. Other council members refused. They argued that using such weapons would make them no better than the humans. The council split into factions, some wanting peace, others wanting total war. General Krathor, who had survived the battle in Sol system, tried to organize the remaining council military forces. But morale was broken. Soldiers were deserting. Entire fleets were refusing orders. The council's power was collapsing from within. Daehyun saw his chance. The council was weak, divided, and desperate. It was time to end this. He gathered his fleet for one final assault. They would attack the council's capital world directly. They would tear down the government that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. The endgame had begun. The council's capital world, Centralis, had stood for 10,000 years. It orbited a triple star system, protected by hundreds of defense platforms and thousands of warships. The council chamber itself sat on an island in the middle of a vast ocean, a symbol of peace and stability. That symbol was about to fall. Admiral Daehyun stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the fleet assemble. 2,000 human ships and another 3,000 from coalition allies. It was the largest force humanity had ever commanded. Today would decide the war. Today would decide the future of the galaxy. The attack began with Commander Tae Yang's cyber assault. He had been planning this for months, planting viruses and backdoors in council systems. When he activated them, chaos erupted across Centralis. Defense platforms went offline. Communication networks crashed. Planetary shields flickered and died. The council's defense fleet tried to respond, but their ships wouldn't start. Their weapons wouldn't fire. Tae Yang had infected everything. Years of careful infiltration had paid off. The most defended world in the galaxy was suddenly defenseless. Daehyun gave the order to attack. 5,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace around Centralis and opened fire. The orbital defenses that still functioned were quickly destroyed. Within an hour, human ships controlled the space around the planet. But Daehyun wanted more than just orbital control. He wanted to personally end the council. He ordered ground troops deployed. Captain Jae-won led the assault, commanding 50,000 soldiers in a direct attack on the council chamber. Jae-won's forces landed on the island in waves. The council had guards, but they were unprepared for the ferocity of the human attack. Soldiers who had lost their homes and families fought with a fury that terrified the defenders. The battle for the council chamber was brutal and short. Inside the council chamber, Councillor Vexara watched his world collapse. The council members argued frantically about what to do. Some wanted to surrender, others wanted to fight to the death. Vexara himself sat quietly, knowing that this was the end. When the chamber doors exploded inward, Jae-won entered with his soldiers. The council guards raised their weapons but never got to fire. Human soldiers cut them down instantly. The remaining council members stood frozen in fear. Admiral Daehyun walked into the chamber moments later. He had waited years for this moment. The grand hall where he had once signed Earth's membership agreement was now filled with smoke and bodies. The council members who had ordered Earth's destruction stood before him, helpless. Vexara stepped forward. The old reptilian looked tired and defeated. He spoke through a translator, his voice steady despite everything. He said the Council had been right to fear humanity. Earth had proven to be exactly the threat they worried about. Look at what humans had become. Monsters who killed billions without mercy. Daehyun listened without emotion. Then he pulled out his weapon and shot Vexara through the head. The counselor fell dead at his feet. Daehyun looked at the other council members and spoke clearly. They were right to fear humanity, but they were wrong to strike first. They created this monster. Now they would face it. The execution was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species watched as the council that had ruled for 10,000 years was torn down. Some cheered. Many were horrified. All understood that everything had changed. The remaining council forces surrendered within hours. General Krathor, commanding the last organized defense fleet, chose to take his own life rather than face capture. His final message was simple. Humanity had won, but at the cost of their souls. Minister Su Jin took charge of the occupation. She established military governments on council worlds and began the process of dismantling their military capabilities. The terms were harsh. Complete demilitarization, economic reparations to Earth and other damaged worlds, human oversight of their governments for at least 50 years. The galaxy accepted these terms because they had no choice. Humanity controlled the most powerful military force in known space. The coalition of the Forsaken supported them. Anyone who resisted faced the same fate as the Council. But victory tasted bitter. Dr. Hana sat in her laboratory, looking at reports from the war. 15 billion Council citizens dead, most of them killed by her bioweapons. 3 entire species facing extinction, hundreds of worlds damaged or destroyed. The cost of revenge had been terrible. She thought about the woman she used to be, a scientist who wanted to explore the galaxy and learn about alien life. That woman had died with Earth. In her place was someone who had created weapons of mass murder. She couldn't wash the blood from her hands. Captain Jaewon returned to Earth as a war hero. Parades were held in his honor. Medals were given. But he felt nothing. The man who had once laughed and loved was gone. In his place was a killer who followed orders and felt no guilt, until he tried to sleep. Every night Jaewon saw the faces of those he had killed, not just soldiers, civilians, families, children who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had told himself they were necessary casualties. But in the dark, alone, he knew the truth. He had become a monster. Commander Taiyang dealt with his own demons. His cyber attacks had shut down power grids, hospitals and life support systems across dozens of worlds. Millions had died not from weapons but from infrastructure collapse, deaths that were slower and more painful than a quick bullet. Minister Su Jin found herself ruling over a galactic empire she never wanted. The coalition of the Forsaken looked to her for leadership. Former council species needed guidance. Earth needed someone to manage all the new responsibilities. She had wanted to be a diplomat. Instead, she had become a conqueror. And Admiral Daehyun sat alone in his quarters, staring at an old photo of his family. His wife's smile, his children's laughter. They had been dead for over a decade now. He had avenged them. He had destroyed the council. He had made them all pay. So why did he feel so empty? Ambassador Tholmik came to visit Daehyun in those dark days. The insect alien had been humanity's ally throughout the war, but now he looked at Daehyun with sadness. He asked the question that haunted everyone. Had it been worth it? Daehyun didn't answer at first. He thought about everything that had happened, the deaths, the destruction, the transformation of humanity from victims to monsters. They had won the war. They had crushed their enemies. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be trifled with. But at what cost? Earth was still a damaged world. Billions of humans were still dead. And now billions of aliens were dead too. The cycle of violence had consumed everyone. Humanity had proven they were stronger than the Council. But were they better? Or had they just become a new tyranny to replace the old one? Thalmik pressed the question. What would humanity do now? Would they rule the galaxy with an iron fist like the Council did? Would they use their power to dominate and control? Or would they choose a different path? Daehyun finally looked at his old friend. For the first time in years, doubt crossed his face. He had been so focused on revenge that he never thought about what came after. He had spent a decade building a war machine. Now he had to decide what to do with the peace. The galaxy waited for humanity's answer. Would they be merciful victors or cruel conquerors? Would they build something better than the Council or just repeat the same mistakes? The war was over. The hard part was just beginning. Daehyun called a meeting of Earth's leadership. Dr. Hana, Captain Jaewon, Commander Tae Yang, and Minister Su Jin gathered together. They looked at each other and saw the same thing. Warriors who had won their war but lost pieces of themselves in the process. The question before them was simple but important. What kind of galaxy did they want to build? They had the power to shape the future. They could be remembered as heroes who saved the galaxy from tyranny, or they could be remembered as the monsters who replaced one evil with another. The choice would define humanity for generations to come.